What is good, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Big Ticket. I'm your host, Vick3. Hey, what's good, everybody? It's Friday night. Thought I'd do something tonight, and we have a good couple of games. We 3-0 right now, so I thought what I would do is I would bring over one of the best Eagles beat writers there is today. So I went out and I got my guy, Chris Franklin from New Jersey. NJ.com. Come through. Chris, how we doing tonight, my guy?
Vick3, how you doing, man? Doing well, man. How about yourself?
Good, good, man. Hey, you're on the show. I can't feel any better right now.
Well, I appreciate the invite, man. Seriously, thank you. Been wanting to make an appearance here. It's been a while, but I'm glad we finally got to do this right now. And it's
Yeah, it was
Friday.
something that's been in the works for some times, and I'm very glad that you were able to come on.
Yeah, definitely, man. It's a good time to do it, man. It's Eagles. When you look at everything that's going on with them, when you look at the season overall, man, you can't get much better at this better start. You can't. Who doesn't want to talk football right now? Seriously.
Definitely, definitely. But before we do that, let me just shout out to the people that took out the time to come through. We got my guy Logan. Appreciate you. He was one of the first ones up here. My guy Nightings, Drew Johnson. Thank you. Listen, my guy ECG family member. We got my guy Dante up in here. Appreciate you. Key in the building as always. Thank you. Drew again. Um, Listen, we got a lot of people in here. I want to thank you all so much for taking the time out to come through. But let's get this started off. As you said, we had a good start to the season. So let me get your thoughts on the impressive, 3-0 start from the Eagles.
Well, I'll say this: that when you look at the way that they're clicking, especially you got to start offensively, because when you look at the way this offense is clicking right now, it all starts with the quarterback. You look at the way Jalen Hurts is the way he's throwing the ball, the way he's making the smart decision, running it, and making the smart decisions where to throw the ball to. That's what gets everything going. Then that the acquisition of AJ Brown, you're starting to see pay dividends early already. When you look at the way that he's able to make those tough contested catches along with, and you look at the space that he's creating now for Devonta Smith, that he's creating for Dallas Goddard and Quez Watkins, and even the run game. You're starting to see safeties having to start go back a little bit more because they don't want to get beat. So the run game can open up a little bit more too. So I think that's a good way. Defensively, you're starting to see the defensive line finally coming around. I mean, you've invested so much money into that front four, and you start to see dividends. I know, granted, we know it was Carson Wentz last week, and we know his perpetuity to hold the ball a little bit more, but finally they were able to take advantage of it. And I think the secondary now, well, minus Vontae Max for his upcoming game, but when you look at overall the way these cornerbacks are playing in conjunction with the safeties and the way the linebackers have been playing too. When was the last time you see Eagles linebackers do well? So I think overall you got this mix. Both sides are starting to come together a little bit more and play that complementary football they want. And it's worked to help them get to 3-0.
Oh, definitely. And listen, that defensive line was eaten last week with Carson Wentz. But we'll get to them in a little bit. But let me ask, we had the excitement, so far, like we said, 3-0. We had great couple of games. Kind of slow start at first, but let me get your impression. What was your thoughts on, the team before the season started?
I thought it could be. The biggest questions I had were defensively because I was still looking at that line. They're still a little bit older. You look at Fletcher Cox. You look at Brandon Graham. They're Brandon Graham, especially coming off the Achilles, and you see what they were doing. It's like, okay, they finished next to last in the league with sacks last year, and they got Hassan Reddick, but you didn't know how they're going to fit him in. And then you look at the linebackers. You knew I liked Kaiser White coming in. I really did. I thought he could play well in space, and I like T.J. Edwards. I thought he can do well, but you want to see how they meshed well. And that was the biggest questions marks I had on there. I thought offensively, and everybody say like Jalen Hurts, Jalen Hurts, Jalen Hurts, Jalen Hurts. I thought he was progressing. Looking through what I saw in training camp, I thought he was progressing well. Now, did I think he was going to be the top graded quarterback of PFF? No, I thought guys like Josh Allen still get that, but I thought he could be a top 10, top 15, and he's outplayed that expectation. He's way outplayed that as well too. And he was rewarded with that NFC Offensive Player of the Month. So I thought this team could be an 11-win team. Now, barring any significant injuries, barring anything I've seen, this team could be in contention for at least maybe a at least maybe the 2 seed. I'll put that far.
Yeah, yeah. And you listen, speaking of significant injury, this is something that's off of script, what I didn't have. But let's talk about it real fast with what happened last night with Tua. A lot of people said, the week before we saw that injury, we saw him stumble to get up. Then last night we see another head injury. For you, what did you take from that? And how the team dealt with Tua and his injury.
See, it's a little personal when it comes for me in that way because I played football from high school, semi-pro, and everything else, and I've had my own fair share of concussions. Those they're no joke. You don't want to wish them on anybody because you sit there looking
Mhm.
like there's times when you get the little minor ones. You're like, I had a minor one, and you're like, oh, it's just a little like that. The times where like something's not feeling right, something's not feeling right. You get that, and it does take its toll over time. I look at the way I do have questions about how they handled the basically him returning even to be back for this game. I know it's on a short turnaround on Thursday night because it's not. You can say like I have a cushion. Those symptoms last a little bit as well too. And they can say you can say it's fine. You can say, oh, I did all the tests. I remember back a couple of years ago, players were memorizing tests. Not in the NFL. I don't know about that, but I remember guys were memorizing tests, whatever. And it's like, okay, let me get back in. So
Mhm.
I have serious questions about it. If I'm the NFLPA, I thought they did the right thing in looking into it because that's you can't mess around with those. I mean, it's you see some of these guys that look punch drunk sometimes from having way too many ones, and he's got he's got to start thinking about his long career. He's got potential for a long career. You don't need to rush it back just for a Thursday night just to try to we're going to still remain undefeated.
Yep.
Nobody's ever going to be undefeated again. My personal opinion. So you got to look long term. If they want to have a special season, they can't have them continue getting banged up and getting these head injuries.
Yeah, it was very scary. The first injury, the second one, again, everybody saw it. They played it time and time again. You saw his fingers, you saw the reaction. It was something that you wouldn't want to see. You wouldn't wish that. And a parent, and like as a parent, that's something
Yeah,
you definitely want to see from your child. So
yeah.
I think the way the team handled it wasn't the right way to go about it. But with that being said, do you think that the NFL will overcorrect and they'll be more cautious going forward?
I think those red hats, the guys that are up there, I think they're going to give them, especially. I think they're going to put a bigger spotlight, especially the next couple of weeks. So they know everybody because right before getting on there, I'm watching the national news, and all of a sudden they're showing the video all over and over again too. So they know everybody's really truly paying attention. So I think they're going to give the red hats a little bit more leeway. And they're going to be a little bit more cautious. And if a guy even looks even a little bit that they're going to hold them out just to keep them safe and not bring more attention to this stuff.
Yeah, as they should. The NFL, talks a big game about caring about player safety. They got to show it more. I think that's one of the issues that they've been having. Whether it's domestic violence with player safety, they have to show more than what they actually say they do. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons that you see a lot of backlash like you did last night.
Yeah, especially and you mentioned domestic violence. It seems like you can get a longer sentence for betting on your own team, i.e., Calvin Ridley, than you do with doing something like that. There really needs there has to be when it comes to stuff like that. There's got to be stricter, better enforcement and stricter things because you're saying one thing, but you're absolutely doing a whole nother thing and sending a whole different message when you don't follow up on stuff like that.
Yeah, and like you said, the most important thing is that message that you're sending, and they're not sending a clear and positive one right now at the moment.
Yeah, it's bad, and I know Goodell gets a lot, and I think this is one he deserves. This is something he has to step in. And he can hear, oh, it's the owners' league. Goodell's doing what the owners do. Well, the owners need to have that deep conversation with themselves. But you see how much money rolls in there. It's like, all right, cool. We'll just have to keep the game going on. It's a dirty sport sometimes when you look at it, man. Some of
Oh
the stuff.
yeah. Listen, it became $1 billion industry on the backs of a lot of peoples, and it'll continue to be that. But going forward, let me ask a question. After watching the first three games for the Eagles, what stood out to you the most about this team?
I think though. I think when I look at that, I like the way that I like the way they congealed already. You see a chemistry already with this team. You see guys that are you have a lot of new pieces on both sides of the ball, and you see already they're clicking. That's I put that on coaching to be able to get everybody on the same page and be able to get that. But also I put it on the captains and the players as well too, because a lot of times you see you could have easily had a situation where you came in with you added AJ Brown, and if you didn't have the right character guys and right chemistry guys like the Devonta Smith, the Quest Walker, something like that, saying, "Well, he's going to take away from mine. Why should I even do this?" and start sulking and walking around. And you got to look at the leadership of the team to be able to make that happen and to have it going the right way. Wins help everything, but when you look overall at the way that this team is set up when it comes to its leadership ability, when it comes to that, and how they're instilling a culture and a chemistry. I think that's the thing, the part for me early on, I've been impressed with.
Yeah, and that was one of the things where when CJ got traded over here, that was one of the things he said. He was like, the guys welcome me with open arms. The first thing he said was he has a feeling of family. And that's something that a lot of teams don't have. A lot of teams have camaraderie, but you rarely hear the word family being used when referenced, to teammates and other players.
Yeah, you hear Nick Sirianni. He talks about that too, that connecting aspect, and we hear it's almost he also like connected, like, oh, we know this is about to come out when you start to answer questions, but it's one of those things that they really put an emphasis in, and it's really starting. You can hear it's really trying because when you look at the good teams as they go along in the season, especially the playoff runs, because they know and it's going to happen. The Eagles aren't going to go undefeated. I think everybody knows that they're not going to go undefeated on that one.
I think you may have to say that one more time for the people in the back.
Oh,
They don't really hear that well.
the 72 Dolphins are going to have that toast again, and we all know that's going to happen. It's going to happen. They're going to lose a game. And there may be a stretch, and we'll schedule they may lose a couple, 2, 3. But you have to have that chemistry, camaraderie, that connect and the connection there to withhold some of that. Because as much as myself, my colleagues in the media and everything else were saying, "Hey, this team is really looking really good." When they're going bad, we're going to also critique them as well too, and it's going to be tough criticism. So when that happens, you got to have that ebbs and flows, and you got to have a good core there, and I think they do have that.
Yeah, I honestly believe that. I think we really do. And speaking of Coach Sirianni, um, what changes have you noticed from him from this year compared to last year?
I think he's also a little bit more comfortable, and I thought you start to see that as the season went on. Like he's always a confident guy, and you can hear it. You can hear when he talks. You can hear it when he's that one too. But I think at least when he's talking to us, when he seems more comfortable. He seems more relaxed. Like he's acclimated to the role a lot more. Because
Hmm.
as much as you go through that first season, you're still going. That was the first time for him doing some of that stuff in the head role. Because as a coordinator, you can see when you move from that one chair, the OC, all the way up to the head, it's a whole different look. And you can see that he was going through, he's getting used to some stuff, and he was always confident, but he was still thinking like, "Hey, what do I do?" Like he's getting used to that and building his own experiences. Now this year, he knows what he has coming in there. He's always experienced it beforehand. So you look at that and you're like, you can see he's like, all right, cool. He's more affable, laughing and up and stuff, but he's still pretty hard. I mean, we saw during practice on Thursday, he was getting after guys if they were slacking. I think what's it was say Deion King, yeah, he was slacking. They were doing a ball security drill, and I can't use the word that he was using. Like what? Like he was getting on his guys because he didn't want him to fall in that trap of being complacent, and you got to have that as well too. So he looks more comfortable. He's still back to being the same Nick in that aspect when it comes to that. So
Well,
we'll see.
he's come a long way from that first interview. He was a little nervous, and now, like you said, you see him more comfortable. You see him open, and especially when you're talking about with the players, the relationship that he has with the players, can't be talked about enough. We saw in the offseason when he was talking with Jalen Hurts when he had that little handshake. That's something that only he and his son have. You know what I mean? Like those are bonds that you want to see with your coach, and you don't really see that with a lot of teams. In Detroit, we all see it because we had Hard Knocks. We've seen what they were going through, but you really don't get that insight with those teams like you do with Nick. And like you said, there are times where they'll come down on you. Like he's done it. What was it? I think it was with Gainwell. He did it with
Yep.
Gainwell the first game of the year, and Gainwell was like, you know what? I like that. I take to hard coaching. There's a side of Nick that we can be cool and hang and talk, but there's another side where you have to understand where he's the coach and he's the boss, and you have to do things in a certain way.
Yeah, because you imagine right now Urban Meyer doing that with the Jacksonville Jaguars last year? Nah, you didn't see that. Look what happened. I mean, he was going to restaurants and taking different flights and everything else. He just said, "Forget this," and the players turned on him quickly once they saw that. It's like, it's not this. 'Cause- And I think it's not like college where you pretty much have to go behind the coach no matter what you're doing. Like guys are grown men, and
Hmm.
that's them. You see what they're doing. So yeah, he's living by it, and he's taking and he's talking. He's treating them like men. And that's helping out.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things when we made the move on from Chip. One of the things that kept on being said was we want someone with emotional intelligence. They made the move to Doug, which listen, Doug was a player's coach. He was that guy, but Doug was a player's coach sometimes to a fault. It seemed like even with the people on his coaching staff, he's that friend to a fault. And I think with Nick, you kind of understand the boundary between friend and coach. more than what you did with Doug. The lines were a little blurred more with Doug, but with Nick, it's more defined.
Yeah, and it's almost like it's like an ebbs and flows when you get these coaching searches. It's only the overcorrection where you go from, like you said, Chip, and then you go to Doug's like, all right, cool. No, you know what? No. We didn't want somebody who's that much of a, or you know what, just going back to this. So all of a sudden you see like, no, we got to choose. We want somebody who still has it, but we want to make sure we push them just a little bit too, so we won't get too complacent and start doing that. So you see it. I think this is a part of that little overcorrection that way. But
Hmm.
to this point, you see he's got some of the traits that you need. He reminds me, he's got a little bit of Doug in him, and he's got a little bit of Andy in him. And because from stories I'm hearing, I've heard words like my third year beating stories you hear about Andy and stuff. How that one too. He's got a little bit of that to him. He hasn't done a George Hegeman where he hasn't forced a guy to push a sled down in front of all of us and make an example out of him, but he'll get on somebody, a guy, if case will say, hey, no, don't slack here or run the route. That's route running was a big one, train camp. Run the route the right way. Come on, what's up? So you see it a little bit. You see a little bit both of them in there.
Yeah, listen, sometimes I think players need that because you're so used to being coddled. You're so used to being told that you're the best. And all of a sudden, when you come to a point where you have to like expand on your talents, you don't want to because you feel like you've already arrived. I think Nick is that coach that, he'll get in your face and is like, listen, wherever you think you're at right now, that's not where you're at. You need to do better. And that's one of the things I love about him. And yeah, like he does have elements of those other coaches, but you can see like he is his own guy and he's forming like what I create, like it's like a new generation of coaches. They're very young, they're very knowledgeable, they're good with players, but at the same time, they kind of have that old school feel where they can get in your face at a drop of a dime.
Yep. And you see that too. And he mentions this a lot. Like when you look at his influences and you look at his background, when you look at a guy like Larry Karros, when you look like he was coaching with Jason Candle and Matt Campbell and Iowa State, and you see when you see some of the guys. I mean, look at Tommy Reese the other week at Notre Dame. Like that's one of his friends. You will see him yelling at the Notre Dame court. It's all from that. You can see like he got a couple elements from all these guys here and there and everything. You can see that stuff. So over time and throughout his experiences, yeah, it shaped him to who he is. So you got that weird, not not so much some weird mix, but you got that unique mix of personalities there.
Oh yeah, and he is a personality. When you talk about with the flowers and got to grow and do water the soil, like he has his own personality, and he's pretty good at it when he takes the jokes too. He can take it because you hear on Pat McAfee. I don't know if you ever watched Pat McAfee. Listen, sometimes they dog him out, but he laughs at it. He's cool with it.
It's fun. You need to have that as a head coach too, because you're pretty much you have to laugh at yourself at times. This anything. So you can't take everything too seriously. You can't take this game too seriously. You got to remember it's still just a game, but to get paid to play the game. It's nice, but it's so
Yeah.
you gotta laugh. There's just so much stuff you can laugh about when it comes to overall this game as well. So he's got that balance. I think he's got that right balance.
Oh yeah, and I think every team is a reflection of their coach, and our coach reflects us so well.
Yeah, he does a lot. I mean, even looking at I saw the not too far as well too. The news was on too. They had the on Twitter. They released that video about what Batman slays and stuff like that. You see, like the way that they're coming around it, like you can tell it's chill and nobody's taking offense to it. And everybody's like, stuff like that helps out a lot. It really does, and they bounce off that. I'm waiting to see which one they say Nick's going to be because that actually kind of funny to see which one they say if they ever do something like that. Which Batman Nick's going to be, but who knows? Who knows? It'll be funny on that.
Oh, that's gonna be that old Batman, that Frank Miller Batman, that grizzled Batman.
I can see Stoutland being that grizzled Batman. The way he goes like for now, Stoutland would be a good. I don't know. There's so many adjectives you can use for. I hope they use. I hope they show one on there. I really do.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a question because now let's move it over to our quarterback Jalen Hurts. We had a lot of talk. He was very controversial in the offseason. A lot of people talked about him, saying he couldn't throw, couldn't read defenses, he couldn't do a lot of things. But let me get what you think about his performance these first 3 games.
I think when I look at the offseason, I think the one thing he really did need to do was change some of his mechanics because you have it. Guys can have arms, and it's just all of a sudden they so I'll start with this. I think a lot of people think that you have to have like an actual natural arm like up top here just to be strong and throw and to be elite. No, a lot of this is coming from your footwork and your core.
Hmm.
And his footwork, there are times where he was taking false steps or extra steps, and it took part, and you saw it on some of those throws, and it wasn't as accurate as it was beforehand. And you can see he fixed that. His release is a lot quicker than what it was beforehand. But I think more importantly, I like what I've seen from him out of the pocket. He looks like he's more comfortable in that area, mainly because he's been in the same offensive system now back to back years. So that helps out a lot because when you know the same terminology, when you know where your routes are going to be going, when you know all that stuff already, it's good. It helps out a lot. You get that anticipation. You get your receivers. Also helps that you have the receivers you have right now too. That kind of that helps a lot too. But I think I like the way that he's progressing. I like the way he's timely. He's making his reads, and I look at the way that he's playing when it comes to his decision making has been good too. I mean, it was a little unorthodox. Some of those ways he was getting rid of the ball, especially in the Lions game where he was just throwing it. But it was a smart play because he didn't have to take a sack and lose a lot of yards. Put the team in some really long, like third and long situations. Kept them in manageable, makeable down. So I look at stuff like that, and he's got. I'm starting to see, and I'm not calling it before anybody thinks like, "Oh, what are you doing for?" I'm not calling this, but when you look at who he wanted to emulate, when we first talked to him in 2020, and he said Russell Wilson was one of the quarterbacks he really liked to emulate, you're starting to see little elements of that in his game. He's still his own guy, but when you look at when it comes to decision making, like maneuvering, they're not the tallest guys either, too. But the way he's moving around, trying to find that throwing window and get the ball out, he's able to do that. And to buy time, I think you start to see that a lot.
Oh yeah, we are seeing that. And you touched on it a little bit earlier, but let me ask, what do you think about, him playing in that office, in that system for a second year in a row? Is that a major factor into his production so far this season?
Oh yeah, because when you go, if you look, the fact that he hasn't played in the same offense since he was back at Channelview is crazy when you think about it. Because when you think of Alabama, you're thinking like, okay, you remember Nick Saban, but they went through a bunch of them. Sarkeesian, they were Maryland coach, I forget his name. He's going to kill it. Just coming down, probably winning like 9 o'clock. Like, oh, it should have been this guy. But when you look at all the, he had so many different offensive coordinators. Then you come to the NFL. Oh, Doug's here. You got Press Taylor. You got everybody else like that. It's like, all right, as your quarterback's coach, and you're sitting there like, okay, I'm ready to learn. Doug's gone. The whole staff is revamped. Now you got Nick back here. And I think what they've done, and you look at this, they're taking a thing. They're basically tailoring the offense to what he does best. And when you look at what he does best, the RPO game. I know the RPOs are not an offense in itself, but what they're able to do with it by basically putting defenses and worrying about, okay, you got to respect the run game that the Eagles have given to Miles Sanders. You got to respect Jalen Hurts' legs. But oh yeah, you have these receivers going downfield. It puts defenses in a bind, and he's taking advantage of all that mainly because of his legs, but he's taking advantage of all that, and he's getting out ball out in time. And he's doing all the stuff that's necessary on him. And then you look at the design runs. Would I like to see a little bit less of them? Yeah, having them here and there, using them sparingly just to keep the defense on, especially on the backside. Okay, I get that. Like using them in the fourth quarter when you're up by 24. Yeah, I like to see a little bit less, unless they really need to, and it's a close game. But I look at the way that he's do the things that he's doing in this offense, and the way it's being tailored and the way he's maneuvering. I think that it's huge that he's in this for a second straight year.
Oh, definitely. And yeah, listen, I the tailored runs too. I wish they would remove that. A lot of them up. It's unnecessary. You can give the ball to Miles. You can work out with your running backs. But I understand the thing is to confuse the defense, and they're doing a very good job of it. So at the moment, like I said, I don't want them to go too far to the point where they're using him like they used to use Cam. They use Cam Newton, they're using the point where he couldn't even do anything. You don't want to run your quarterback that far. Again, you just want to confuse the defense to a certain point. But
And
let me. Oh, go ahead.
no, I'm saying even when they are at the goal line, they're a shotgun. You're like, why are they playing a shotgun? And you got Jalen Hurts there. Well, it's you look at the stuff and you want to keep the backside honest because you don't know you got to keep him pull it. If in case he pulls it, you're drawing two defenders already just with the threat of him running. You got the two defenders on the one side that have to stay back there, and now you got less guys trying to cover, giving it when you get the ball from the running back. So just the little things like in that offense that they're doing now it's really cool.
Yeah, it's really good. And again, that's part of the reason why we're 3-0. But you've known Jalen Hurts. You've seen him. You've been able to talk to him. Have you noticed, and do you believe that this version of him is the best version we're going to see, or have we just barely scratched the surface?
If you, I'll do on the field and off the field. Off the field, Jalen, he's always been the same. He's that stoic, even kill. Well, with us, I'll put it this way. There's a caveat. With us, he's the stoic, even kill that. When you see him in the locker room, you see his videos like, what was this Jalen Hurts? When he's doing the post game speeches, always like, he's fiery, but it stays the same. But I think you can see. I don't think he's going to sustain the whole. I don't think he's going to sustain 83% completion percentage. He's not going to do that. But I think when you look at what a guy who can give you about 300 total yards of offense game in and game out, I think that's definitely sustainable with the weapons that he has. The one thing I want to see he and the rest of the offense do as a whole, I want to see him continue that same put the foot on the gas a little bit more in the second half. Because
Mhm.
besides the Detroit game, I think that's the one time they actually scored like 14 points. Otherwise, they struggled. And I think that they need to find a way. They've been trying to be conservative, and it hasn't worked. They tried to be aggressive, it hasn't worked that way too. They need to find that same spot. So I think he can really get even more yards than what he's had right now. That's the scary thing about the last 2 games. When you look at it, it's like, wait a minute, he finished with like 300 something yards. He could have had a lot more if they continue to do that way. So it's he's not. I'm not going to say he's not going to finish with with the league with the most passing yards. I don't think that, but I think he can be a guy who's going to wind up in the top 7, 6 when it comes to that. All said and done.
Hey, that's not bad at all. And again, one thing I wanted to see out of him was just improvement.
Yeah,
Just steady improvement, and we've all seen that so far.
yeah. You look at that. I mean, Vegas is starting to even believe now. When you look at, I was looking back and it was looking at the MVP numbers, and I forget what book had it, but I'm looking at it like Jalen Hurts to be an MVP. He's plus 450, and which, I probably would say that because MVP. Now you think he's the second highest one. Like some books like plus 200. Like, wait, what? Wait, what? Like, no, sorry, it wasn't plus 450. It was I want to say plus. It was like plus 850, 1,000 around there when it came to that. Because then now he's down to 200. It's like, you kidding me? Like he's that like you see that shows how much people are starting to buy in and looking like, no, he can. He's been good. He's been good.
Oh yeah, he's definitely been good. But like you said, you've talked to him personally. Have you seen a difference in the way he carries himself and how he addresses the team now?
He's same Jalen. He's the same Jalen on that one too. He's gotten this respect, and it's tough. I think, especially for a young quarterback, to get the respect of the veterans on a team. And when you look at what this current group of veterans have accomplished, they won a Super Bowl. They've got Pro Bowls, a lot of Pro Bowls. When you look at guys like Kelsey, Graham, Cox, and you can't fake it because these guys have been there before. They know what it takes and everything else. And to see that not only that he had the buy-in early this season, but at the end of last season, these guys were looking like, you know what, this guy is really, really a leader and really can help out in that aspect. You look at it, and I think you got to buy in. That's key. So he's still the same Jalen Hurts. He's still the same guy that's able to galvanize the team and rally morale on one thing. And I think overall, I think that's been one of the main that's helped him out too, because he's just not phased by anything. It just looks like it's like you can tell him right now, hey, there's a car over there. It's like an expensive Bugatti. Someone wants to give that for. All right, cool. I can say that's cool. All right, cool. Hey, Jalen, somebody just like doused some water, and you're like, all right, it's all right. We'll make sure it's good. He's that same type of guy.
But it's that cool, calm demeanor that gets him through. Because again, you've seen the comments. You're on Twitter. You've seen how much there's talk about him. Any regular person that would see that would affect him. But again, it's just like it just slides right off him. He doesn't care, and
He stays
that's the demeanor you need in Philadelphia.
he stays away from that. I still remember what's the name when the report came out about the OTA performance he had, and he didn't
Yeah,
find out until AJ Brown told him because he's just like, I'm not going to pay attention to that stuff. He really is like that. He lives in that facility, and I mean, it's such a sight can saying like it was a Friday, which is getaway day, where everybody that's their day to go see their family, their friends, girlfriends, what have you. And that he's still in there like 8 o'clock at night. And everybody else is at 4 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night, 4 o'clock, sorry. And he's still like, yeah, I'm just doing his workout and everything else. He lives football, and that's where he stays on that way. So it helps him block it out.
yeah, and also with the team making the acquisition, we talked about it earlier with his best friend AJ Brown. I'm pretty sure that helped a lot, and that probably showed everyone else on the team a different side of Jalen, more of a personal side of Jalen. When you have your best friend on the team, you know how you act. You're more of yourself out there. But let me ask the question then: how important do you think the acquisition of AJ Brown was, not only to Jalen but the team as a whole?
I think when you look at I think offense, I think because Jalen still has a lot of friends on this one too. Him and Lane Johnson still they're really good friends. I mean, Jalen works out with Lane during the off season, and they do their thing, and he's friends with a lot of guys too. You see him reaching out to that stuff. So to have another guy here, it was just adding another guy. You don't want to say that when it comes to like his friend. Like it was wrong. His best friend in school in there, but he was still going out there saying hey to everybody and everything else from that one too. But when you look on the field, what AJ Brown did, I talk a lot of it like it's basketball with the gravity. When you always hear Joel Embiid brings gravity with him because all the defenders have to go down to him and opens things up for it. Well, he certainly brings a lot. AJ Brown certainly brings a lot of gravity towards him when you look at this offense. You got to shift. You see safeties shade over to him a little bit, especially after that first game where he went off. The Vikings overcorrected, going, well, we're not going to beat them. And next thing you know, you look at Devonta Smith, you look at Dallas Goedert, you look at all those guys, they freed up on the other side and Prince 1-on-1. Then now you're looking like, wait a minute, Devonta Smith had a big game. And so you can't just the way that he sets up and puts defensive coordinators in predicaments now, it's tough it makes it tough to defend because I still think back to that Tampa Bay game, back in the wild card loss.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at the way that they were able to just double Devonta Smith, double Dallas Goedert, beat us with Jalen Reagor, Quez, or what have you, and they weren't able to do that. Now that you have another bona fide number one receiver, so I think they have two number ones. I think Quez can play up to a number two if you got enough balls here, and you got a tight end who's like I think personally like around 6'5", 6 or 5, probably put 5 right now. Way he's playing, you got that. It's tough to cover these guys overall. You almost got to say, okay, who you're going to let get their targets and just not try to hurt us too much. You're almost at that point, and it's tough. It is tough, and just the fact that he's on that squad and he's able to do that now, it makes that offense dynamic.
Oh, it definitely does. And speaking of those three receivers, what are your thoughts on the three Batmen and how they performed so far this season? Because we know, listen, I can't wait because I don't know if you heard Jason Kelsey and Travis on their show this week, where Jason said, if he scores first Fat Man, I'm all for the Fat Man. Linemen need their love too.
According to Slay, and this is the funny part. You try to keep a straight face in there when you hear guys make these jokes so that you can't. According to Slay, he says that Kelsey is not a fat Batman at all. He's a sexy Batman because Slay is Mr. Sexy number 1. Then it goes Jason Kelsey's Mr. Sexy number 2. Then Lane Johnson's Mr. Sexy number 3. So it might be Sexy Batman and get the cape from here on out. I don't know. There's too many Batman flying around when it comes to this now, but it's crazy. But
I'm gonna start naming them the Gotham Knights, just so that way we gotta keep on saying Batman.
It's true. Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 16. Oh, geez.
Right?
Jeez almighty. But I look at them. I think Quez is due. I'm looking. I don't know if it's this game. Because it could be because I like the Eagles matchups in the seams, especially when you look at Goddard or Watkins, and you see Quez is putting pressure on those safeties. He's due, and I really think he's due for a long touchdown or a long pass play. Because I was talking to back in March, I was talking to an opposing coach who says he didn't understand why last year they didn't use Watkins more in the slot because they were worried. The team he was coaching was worried because of his speed. It was going to be tough to go make sure you go back there and cover him. It is because they're worried about this one-on-one with safety, and you started to see it last week. So I look at the Jaguars, I look at the safeties, and I'm thinking like, you know what, this might be the week. Maybe not, but he's breaking to do. But the fact that you have three bona fide guys who can break off at any point, it's tough. It's like tough trying to stop that. You can't play man to man because if you play man to man, you may get beat by one of them. And then if you cover them right, Jalen Hurts, you got your back to him, and Jalen Hurts to take off and pick up yards that way. If you play zone, Hurts is starting to show a little bit more that he can pick it apart. And then these wide receivers, which if you compare to last year, it's almost night and day. These wide receivers know where, besides Smith, I thought he did good at that last year, know where the empty parts of the zone is. They're sitting there and taking it, and they can pick you apart that way too. So it's rough either way covering these guys.
Hey, and just like you said, the aforementioned, then you got Dallas Goedert out there. So there's a lot to worry about, and that's one of the great things about this team. And credit to Howie Roseman. He did his job. He did his work this offseason. He put a great team together.
And when you look at it, and it's almost forgotten in all this as well too. Granted, it's the beginning of the season and stuff. This team now has 2 first-round picks next year, and if you don't have to use on a quarterback, which looks like they don't have to, You can do so much. You can trade those now to get the cornerback. You can do an. I think it might be tough next year because of given the cap and they have a bunch of guys on 1 year deals and guys and deals up for extension. You can trade for another guy, but another guy like you did with AJ Brown, not or you can trade. There's so much they can do, flexibility they have with that now, and all that came from the decisions he made and the trades he made, and signing these guys to good deals, and you looking at that, and he put them in a position, and you got to say even if they finish with make the playoffs by itself, get 2, 3, like a 3, 4, something, whatever. He's got to be in the conversation for executive of the year just based off of all the stuff moves he's made. So, he, even though he put the team, some of the decisions he made put the team into struggling the previous couple of years, he's
Mhm.
worked his way right back out and has them probably in a better spot than they were even 17 almost.
I think Howie's always at his best when his back's against the wall, when he's doubted the most. When he came out of that dungeon after the Chip Kelly era, he had something to prove, and we saw the moves he made just to get Carson. He got rid of the running back in DeMarco Murray, a move that no one thought could have been done. He made the impossible possible. He moved up. He got a quarterback that we needed at the time, and made the moves even after the fact. They got the quarterback that we have now. So yeah, like Howie puts himself in a rut, but it's kind of beautiful to see himself get out of it.
And he takes a lot, like we were mentioning about Nick and everything, and he takes a lot, and it's got to be rough. And he listens. He knows what's going on around there. He listens to the radio. He reads the articles and stuff like that. He knows what's going on, and I think he used that as the impetus to fuel himself to make sure, like, to see what's going on. Like a general manager always has to have a plan no matter what,
Hmm.
and you have to stick to it a lot of times to the overall vision for what you have. But he's shown that he's amenable to changing it around and moving around to do what's best for the team as well too. I got to commend him for that too, because a lot of times you look like Chauncey Gardner Johnson. How the heck did they get him? And that's all they gave up for him? Oh,
Yep.
okay. All right, cool. That's can't fault him for that. Jalen Rager, what for a fifth? I think this going to wind up being a fifth. I still trying to find out what the full conditions are on that one. But even that one too, just seeing what he's doing right now, it's like, yeah, he's not an impact. It's going to be a 5th round pick.
And even the way he did it so poetically, you got J Jaw going over to Seattle when we wanted DK. Then you got Rager going over to Minnesota where we wanted Justin Jefferson. Like again, he understands the mistakes he makes and he amends for them in the correct way.
Yeah, he does well. That's one guy. I look at Arcega Whiteside. That's one guy I'm just like, just wish he got it together, because he basically would have been what Pascal's doing right now.
Hmm.
I like, although things happen for a reason, and maybe that was the reason why that Pascal ended here, because I think Pascal was doing better what they envisioned for what JJ was supposed to be, and
Yeah.
you can see it's definitely working out with him too.
Hey, like you said, everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, it really does. And yeah, they cleared it out, and now look at this. You had to go through all that stuff with Wentz and at the end of that tenure and the growing pains of that last playoff loss. But now you hope that the experiences they learned last year catapults them now to doing what they can this year, and they got that playoff experience now.
And you hope it makes them hungry, especially the way that they lost and who they
Yeah,
lost to. Because
yeah,
if they're not looking good right now, but if that chance were to come up and that's the first matchup in the playoffs, I would love for them to be able to beat them. Take that going forward. That would be a huge confidence booster.
yeah. Because imagine, and that's what they're really going to need. That's why, even if they lose this week, I don't have them losing, but even if they lose this week, I think that's okay, because
Mhm.
the AFC loss, and that way, it's going to be one. It seems like one of the years where the NFC is wide open, and you're going to be fighting with the Rams. You're going to be fighting with, well, what is it, the Niners? But the Niners, Jimmy G just looks, man,
Done.
I'm
They're done.
mad.
It's a
And you,
wrap.
yep,
When
and you,
Trent Williams went down, that was it.
no,
That was
yeah,
it.
he saved him, and now he's looking. It's one of those things when your left tackle's down, and your quarterback is just like, oh no, no, it's done. But I can see the Bucks. The Bucks are not. Bucks are have too many veterans for people to think like, oh, they're just also rans and that one too. They're going to get Julio back. They're going to get all these guys back. So they're going to need. It's going to be one of those things where they need to rack up those NFC wins, because it's going to come down to a tiebreaker who has a better conference record. And
Hmm.
for the Eagles, it's a lot better for the road to go through Philadelphia, or at least to host that divisional round matchup against if it came to that, than having to go back down there in the heat after you're in this cold all the time, and then going back to the place, the house of horrors that you had down there. So they don't need to rack up these NFC wins as the schedule goes along.
Oh yeah, definitely. And let me just say, for speaking of Jacksonville, this upcoming game, it seems as though Boston Scott will be out of this week's game. What are your thoughts on the possibility of Trey Sermon making his appearance as a Philadelphia Eagle?
See, I think Trey Sermon is what Jordan Howard was last year. He's a guy that you know is going to be tough to bring down. He lowers his shoulder. He keeps his legs turning. I think I saw something. I think his last year he had like 1.9 yards after the catch, after contact. Sorry, and
Mhm.
so he tells the guy he's not an easy guy to get. You can't see those defensive backs going, "Oh, let me just throw a shoulder in him, let me get him down." It ain't going to work that way. And I think he could get a few snaps. I think they're going to lean heavily on Miles. The thing is, he's dealing with his hip. He's still on start and everything, but he's still on the hip, and he'll try to get with Gainwell as well too. But I think you see there's a role, especially like say in a 4 minute role. They're playing in a 4 minute offense. They're trying to milk as much time off the clock. You give it to him, and you try to wear down that team, and almost like a battering ram that way too. But I like the pickup. I think he can. I think I think he's definitely here next year. I had to guess. I think he's here next year. He's your long term, your battering ram to be a complimentary guy with whoever's here remains from next year. So it was a good pickup overall.
Oh yeah, and that's the guy that we want to listen. Every time you hear about the number two running back, what do you hear? We just want a running back, a guy who's going to get that tough yard. That's all we want, and
Yep.
that's why everyone kept on going back to Jordan Howard because that's what he would do. He would get you that tough yard, and he would go off for more. It was only that his injuries, and it's nothing that's his fault. Injuries could happen to any player, but it's only that sets him back, which a lot of players. And one of the players that injuries have set back is Miles Sanders. Let me get your thoughts on his performance so far this season.
I think he's done well. I like what he's done, especially he's gotten better because the one thing that has been a knock on him all bit is his vision. And a lot of times it's just I think it's more of his balance, the way when he's running as well too. Like he's he's getting quickly out to that area. He's being more patient, but there's times when his balance, he was trying to do that shift and then go back where he tried to overcorrect, and next thing you know, it was like the hole's going, and you're like, dude, you can't see the holes. I think that was one thing, but I think he's correcting that a little bit more. You still always for me, it's always a concern when the injury and he's nicked up and that wearing out over time. I still think he can still be an explosive guy in this offense. And the desire is there for him. Of all time, of all years, when it's a contract year, he's going to want to put up a big number so he can get his. So I don't. And over time, I think if they continue to throw the ball as well as they can, it's just going to continue to open things up as well too. And he's going to get more carries in the second half to get up these big leagues as well too. And they're ahead and they're milking out the clock. So I like where he's at now. I just hope that for his sake that he does not out there like and gets like another 4 week injury like he did toward the end of last year, where you're waiting to see if he comes back and he's nicked up and he misses time and he gets to start stopping and get back into the flow of things. So he's doing all right.
Do you think he could be the back that we need, that lead back that we need going forward?
Yeah, this team with this team, especially the way this offense operates. If you look at the way that Sirianni and what the Colts did back a couple of years ago, they used a committee. It was a committee. You still had Taylor, but you still also had Naeem Hines. And they used basically the committee guys, and that's all you really need from them. But it's nice to have a piece where your committee guy is a guy who can be explosive when he gets the chance to do so. And they haven't run a lot of as much read out like true read options like they did that first year when Hurts got inserted when he is in 2020, and you saw him rip off the 70 yarders because they didn't know how to defend it. Like, oh crap, we got Hurts and takes off that way. I feel like he still has it. I think I like when they run behind Mailata and they run behind Dickerson because I think that's where they get their yards. I think they average like at one point they were averaging like 6 yards by going behind them by himself. So if they continue just run off tackle Miles Sanders, he's going to keep on getting you 5-6 yards of carry, and that's all you need in this offense.
Oh yeah. So let me ask: do you think right now, just off these first three games, I know it's premature, I know you haven't seen a huge sample size, but just right now, do you think that the Eagles would resign Miles Sanders?
Only if it's a very team friendly deal. As much as I said all that stuff, unless team-friendly deal right now because it's most of it's not even his fault. It's just the way that the position is valued now.
Yeah.
It's like because hypothetically, say they do extend Jalen Hurts after this season, so there goes a good chunk of your cap. You still have to decide what you're going to do with TJ Edwards. You still have to do with Kaiser White. You got 2 defensive tackles you potentially have to replace because Fletch is going to be a free agent again, or if he doesn't retire. And then you have Javon Hargrave, who's a free agent after this year. You got Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, the guy you gave up a couple pieces for. He's a free agent. James Bradbury's a free. It's so many players here that are going to be free agents that could command some good money. So it's one of those things where you're going to look like, okay, maybe Miles is a little bit down the line when you get, and we know how this team loves to value the lines first and the outer shell. So the lines, the cornerbacks, the safeties, and then work the inside. So it may be, and it's no fault of Miles, but it may be down the line, and by then, Lion Buddy might be gone.
Yeah. Hey, and like you said, we have 2 first-round picks. Moves can be made to acquire another running back.
Yep.
We shall see.
Yeah,
there's a lot of uncertainty for. Listen, before the year started, I say a lot of players on this team had a lot to prove, which is true, and they're doing it right now. But again, at the end of the season, there's a lot of moves to be made to improve this team again because, like you said, there's a multitude of people that are going to be free agents.
I think the one that the either or I think the Eagles are having right now, the Nakobe Dean factor, because when you look at that, he can play middle linebacker and he can play the will. And the 2 guys who are free agents, TJ Edwards, who plays the middle linebacker, the Mike, and Kaiser White, who plays the will. So it's they got some tough and even then I'm like, I think Kaiser adds so much to that edge when you go out to him. So he does so much. He can play middle linebacker like a dime because he has the coverage ability. I like him, but you see the way TJ is playing right now. He's playing at a Pro Bowl level. He's reading the defense. He's filling those gaps and his coverage. That was always been a knack on him. When he goes back in that Tampa 2 and he goes back deep in the coverage, he's making the plays. He's breaking up. TJ Edwards of all people, who people say he can't cover, he's breaking up passes now. So I would not want, this is one of the times where I always sort of think like, oh, I can be a general manager. I can general. This is one of those times I don't want to be a general manager. No. You're good.
Yeah, Howie set himself up for a lot of tough decisions to make, but if there's anyone that could make him, it's Howie Roseman. Like he's been hitting it out the park lately. So I'm excited to see what moves he has, upcoming. But again, talking about the Jaguars, another injured player we have is Avonte Maddox. He's been ruled out of Sunday's game. Do you think this injury will last just this game, or is this something that's going to be lingering going forward?
From what I heard, it was just a roll up. If his ankle went the wrong way, that's what I heard, and the second hand. So I don't want to be like, oh, okay, yeah, I talked to Avonte and that one too. From what I heard, it is rolled, and it's just the timing of it basically meant like it happened in the practice yesterday, so it wasn't enough time. It was serious enough that he couldn't be effective enough to play, but I don't think it's going to be something where you're looking at something long term. So I don't think you're to worry about. I don't foresee an IR stint on this one, but it's something to watch. And you need, and of all weeks that you needed him the most is this week, because when you look at where the Jaguars line up Christian Kirk, I think out of 190 some snaps he had, somewhere around 89, 190, something like that, 126 have been in the slot, and he's producing out there. And you see the way he's been playing. I think you see the way he's breaking up passes. He's navigating insides. And Darius Slay, we're talking to him, asked him about Avonte, and the one thing he said that he really that was really underrated about him was his ability to stop and run. He's in run support. He's doing well. He was getting in there in the box and he was stopping the run too. So that's another element you got to watch. You lose that. So now you're looking at either Josiah Scott, either they come in and you insert Josiah Scott and just try to bracket him with Gardner Johnson. You can move Gardner Johnson down there, but the thing is you're making multiple moves when you do around that, so you got to adjust that. Or you have to have Slay start to follow him, but Slay can play on the inside, but then you got to worry about who's going to play outside. You're using Zach McPherson on the outside more, and there's so many decisions that Gannon's going to have to make, and for it to come basically like 3-4 days before the game happens, you wonder like how much you change your game plan now because of that.
Yeah, and one person that wasn't mentioned is Josiah Scott. So,
Yeah,
what are your thoughts? Josiah Scott and Zach McPherson getting the start Sunday. Do you feel either one of them are ready yet?
I think Zach. I definitely think Zach is, and I think Scott's going to be up. Scott played really well. And one thing I'll say this too about Scott, I thought he was more. He played really well at safety of all things
Hmm.
during training camp. And I was like, I see this. Like he was always going to. He was Scott was always the backup in case something like this happened with Vontae last year. That's why he traded for him. He might have a little bit of a revenge factor going for him. And everybody's talking about Doug coming back. Well, now all of a sudden Scott having gets to go against the team that traded him last year. It's like, okay, you want to trade me for who was it? Derek Houston, somebody like that for like James Houston, something like that for in a 6th round pick. You want to trade him? Okay, fine. He's got something to prove. So I look at McPherson's come a long way. I look from when he was a rookie because he was always a physical guy. He had the speed. There's something like when it came to like his technique, when he can drop back, when his hips and his footwork, a little bit there, he refined it. I look at him in his second year, he looks a lot better. He looks a lot better. So if they decide to move Slay inside to follow Kirk around, I have no problem with him going outside. Scott, I think he's a better nickel corner, and that's saying something, especially with the way he plays safety. But it's Christian Kirk, so I'm like, I'm still a little hesitant no matter what, and I want to. You may have to give him some help in there because even this. I'm sorry, going all place for this one, but I was asked Johnathan Gannon about that. Like, does Avonte Max do? Is like he said that he basically having Scott Maddox in there, he didn't have to use other resources to worry about that in the box and use it in the slot. So now, since you don't have Maddox in there, you have to dedicate some extra stuff. So it creates a lot of problems for Sunday, a lot.
Oh yeah, it would. And speaking of Jonathan Gannon, throughout the offseason, I said one of the biggest unknowns for the Philadelphia Eagles was Jonathan Gannon. We didn't know what to expect from him. You know, last year there was no improvement from him as a coach. You seen Nick, you seen like the ebbs and flows. You seen everyone going up and down, but with Jonathan Gannon, pretty much it was the same thing. We seen a little bump. What was I think like the 8th and 9th game, but then it was back to the same old. Then when you come into the first game of this week, we pretty much seen the same vanilla defense. And then the second and third weeks, totally different team. So let me ask you, what are your thoughts on Jonathan Gannon and the work he's done with the defense so far?
I'm I believe it this way. No matter what happens, I think this is last year in Philadelphia. No matter what,
I hope
reason
so.
being, oh,
Oh my God, I hope so. My Lord. Oh,
I
you
think
you talk. You're speaking to my heart right now. You don't
yeah.
understand. You don't
Well,
understand. Go ahead.
I think he does a lot. I think last year, I look at last year when you look and you start the season with Eric Wilson. We all know how he played, and you look at some of the other pieces he had back there. You couldn't do a lot of things like you wanted. There are times he wanted out, like you trying to disguise coverage. Sometimes it involves having a linebacker line up on one side. He has to go all the way on the other field to get in the zone. I'd rather have the guys they have right now, like Light and Edwards, trying to do something like that, as opposed to Alex Singleton trying to go out there in a pass coverage. I just can't do that. The reason why I say I think this is his last year, no matter what, is his defenses. When you look at like the trees from the Vangio's tree, Vic Fangio trees that
Mhm.
everybody seems to be going with, because it is simplistic on the back end when it comes to coverage, but it allows you to play that matchup zone in the front. So it may look like it's just that's a regular cover two, regular cover. They're playing quarter or something like that for it, but then they have the matchup, so they play different rules, different matchup zones in the middle. A lot of teams are going towards that, and statistically speaking, I know a lot of people hate this when it comes to he doesn't bring a lot of blitzes. Like he's almost like Jim Schwartz, where he doesn't want to bring a lot of blitzes.
Mhm.
Statistically speaking, that defense is doing well when it comes to the amount of yards they're allowing, and they measure it by the explosive plays they allow. They're not allowing a lot of deep passes a lot. So I think it's one of the. I think it wasn't smoke when he got 3 interviews. I think he's that highly regarded. Now, the reason why I say he's going either way is you had all these pieces and you don't perform, and this defense takes a dive. He's gone. I think there's too many guys out there they can use. They can look internally, like a guy like Denard Wilson. You can look at Vic Fangio himself, who's available too. He's sitting around there, but I think he's going to get. I think he's going. The Eagles might. I think personally, I think the Eagles will be looking for 2 new coordinators. So I think he and Shane Steichen are going to get jobs next year. I really truly believe that.
Listen, I think if there was any move on the defense, Vic would be the guy that you have to call because again, that's what we're doing. We're tailoring our defense to what he would do. So I think that would be the logical step. I thought Mike Zimmer was another good guy, but now he's doing everything he is with Jackson State. He's over there being I think he's a consultant or defense coordinator. I don't know what the status is with him, but that's another great mind that I thought that should come in. But My issue with Gannon and his status on his team is his close relationship to Nick Sirianni, best friends. Now, sometimes you got to admit that does come into play. Sometimes we saw that with Doug Peterson last time he was here. With how many people wanted Mike Rowe not to be the offensive coordinator, but he wanted to stick with this guy. I'm hoping that wouldn't be the situation, but I think because of the defense playing so well so early on, he will get looks for head coaching positions next year. He had 3 when he really didn't do much, so I can only assume, I can only imagine what's going to happen. Next offseason. How many teams are going to be looking for coaches? He's gonna be a hot commodity.
I think when you look at what he had a 10th ranked defense with some of those pieces that were on in the back, and I'm sitting like, sometimes that's a pretty impressive in the way itself. Like I think they could have gotten a lot more from that defensive line. That was you tell that there were times where, I mean, we all remember Fletcher after the Raider game. He
Mhm.
wasn't happy. You see that too. But I think when you look at what he did with what they had, yeah, like you did that with that. Wait, you got Singleton to do that much out of this, and you still want we want to talk to you. We don't want to hire you. We want to talk to you, see what you did. Like, 'cause, you're on our radar. But it's, I look at him. He's got a lot of the qualities that we're seeing that they want from the coaches. He's young.
Mhm.
He's very. He is personable. He's very personable, and he actually listens to some of the players, stuff like that for us. So I think owners are looking at that as well too. General manager are looking at that as well too. It's a matter of, and it helps that he's running this type of scheme that he's running right now. It's a matter of if he can get basically maximize what he has out of these players. If not, I think he's going. But if he continues to do this way, he's going that way too.
Yeah, listen. Either way, I think that hopefully, if we're able to make that move, and then Vic Fangio is that guy. I don't want it to be where we make a move and then we get a defensive corner that isn't up to the task. That would be horrible. Then it's kind of like the grass isn't always greener on the other side.
I'm telling you, keep an eye on Denard Wilson and Nick Roush. I really think because from a continuity standpoint, and Denard, I think believe he filled in for a couple of times. Because it's very interesting too when Denard got the defensive passing game title too. Gives him more things, so he has a bigger say in how their secondaries is using the coverage and how it's working in conjunction with the overall game plan for a week. So he got that bump too, and you start to tell like when you look at like who's getting like the assistant head coaching things or is getting like the additional responsibilities. The fact that Bernard got that, I can see in case he goes, they may be prepping him to take over to at least be a serious candidate to become the defensive coordinator if Gannon leaves.
Oh, listen, everybody out there, you heard the exclusive. If it's a move that's made, my guy said it first.
Is this is setting up to it's like defensive passing game? Huh? You got the history with the Jets doing some things. Huh? All right. It started to click like, yeah, and they're going to interview him. Fortunately, and I don't think it's going to be a sham interview with the Rooney Rule, but it would make sense as well too. That I definitely don't think it's a sham. I
Mhm.
mean, it's Denard's another guy you got to look at him possibly being the coordinator. So this might be a whole different coaching staff next year. A whole
Yeah,
different.
listen, I think right now the way this team is set up, it's like not. I'm not trying to say boom or bust, but we're set up to win now. The way
Yeah,
everything has been done, it's like we're set up to win now because next year it might be a totally different story.
yeah. Well, even look at the offensive side of the ball. Steichen has taken Justin Herbert, and he's also taken Hurts now, and the way he's doing. So he might be in a name. His name might pop up for a couple of head coaching jobs. Brian Johnson is highly regarded. Look at the way he's called plays when he was at the University of Florida, and he's also involved with in helping Jalen Hurts develop. He might be an OC somewhere as well too. It's it's like all these guys you start to see like all these 2 years like hey yeah you start seeing like he might be gone. Oh, he gone. Oh, he gone. It's crazy.
Although I have my conspiracy theory on Dallas already has their next coaching candidate lined up with Sean Payton. I do. Yeah, I think that's probably something that's like a secret that's well known. But I do think the dark horse candidate could be Shane Steichen.
I could
That would be it's a quarter. It's a coach who could develop Dak. It's something that they would need because let's be honest, Dak's a good. He has good talent. He's a good quarterback, but circumstances, injuries, little things come up, and they put roadblocks in his way. I think he needs that right coach. I think that's what they were trying to do with McCarthy, but McCarthy's past his prime.
yeah.
Like that Super Bowl that he won. Yeah, he got the team there, but let's be honest, it was that team itself that won that Super Bowl. It wasn't through his coaching. Because we've all seen what his coaching does. It actually loses games. Dallas fans should know more than well.
Yep. Yep. And I would say this for Steichen. I look at the Carolina Panthers and the Washington Commanders because I'm looking at teams that already need quarterbacks who are probably going to be drafted very high as well too because their records are going to be awful. Personally, that one too. And he's got that history with building up quarterbacks. So especially if you have a high asset, because depending on who has like Bryce Young or some of these other guys that are out there, if you get him as a former quarterback who can get a quarterback friendly system out there and gets the most out of talent out of them, I think he's a good guy to help you out because that's the main thing. If you get a good coach, good quarterback combo, you can start to fill all the other pieces. It's still you still need good players, but you can find ways to fill those other pieces. When you got those two set up, which I think Shane can, I think Shane can be a really good head coach. That helps
Mhm.
out a lot.
Oh yeah, definitely. And there's going to be a lot of opportunity with Seattle. Seattle's
Yep.
another opportunity that will be coming up. Coach Carroll won't be there forever. But speaking about coaching opportunities, our old coach Doug Peterson was given another opportunity in Jacksonville,
Yeah.
and Jacksonville is playing pretty good so far. He took down the Colts. The defense is looking great. Trevor Lawrence. A lot of people say that he might not be a good quarterback, but he's looking fairly decent. So let me ask, what do you think of the job that Doug Peterson has done so far in Jacksonville?
I think is our I think whoever was going to take that job that was a former head coach was going to look competent compared to what that mess that was going on down there. But you can see that Doug has it. We've seen this here. Like Doug gets the most out of his quarterbacks. You saw
Mhm.
with Wentz before the injury, and you saw what he did with Foles as well too. And you saw a little bit. You start to see a little bit with Hurts. So Doug does a very good job. He relates with the quarterbacks, being that he was the former quarterback, so he knows what to look for, what reads, what makes him comfortable, everything else. And brought that system in there. And may I'll say this: there is an online file folder online somewhere. I'm not telling it because I don't know that has his playbook back from when the Eagles. And you start to so now I'm looking, I'm like reading it. It's really it really makes it simple. It's not no NFL playbook is simple, too. But you
Mhm.
look at it, it's really you can understand why quarterbacks can do well because it walks them through. You can literally walk you through the whole entire play, your reads and everything else, and it helps out a lot. So
Mhm.
the fact that he brought a similar system down there with a guy who has Trevor Lawrence, who has a lot of talent, a guy who I really think like he just needed a good coach. We all
Yeah.
know Lawrence is a good coach, and he's got that now, Doug. So I think he's done a great job overall.
And what impresses me the most is the person who I had least amount of faith is Press Taylor. When he was with Philadelphia, I will be the first to say, I'm the one saying he got his job because his brother. Again, they're looking at what his brother was doing. They're hoping that, he'd have that same effect. Left, I believe he went to Chicago. Nothing good came about that. But now he's with Doug, and listen, Press Taylor ain't that bad.
That's Press is Doug really thinks highly of Press, and he really thinks that he could be all he could be follow a similar path as himself as well too. And I love what Press did when Wentz was here, and you can see he got Wentz's trust when it came that way. I'm still on a wait and see when it comes to him overall. I I wonder how much I think Press could do really good when it comes to setting up the game plan and getting everything and breaking down a defense and everything else. I think he does really well with that. And he can do well with that. It also helps to have Mike McCoy on that staff too. As
Yeah.
quarterback, so you got like you have two head coaches on the opposite side of the ball. It's like it's pretty good, but I'm still on a wait and see impress. I think so, 'cause especially the fact that when Doug reportedly went in there and he reportedly went to Jeffrey Lurie and go, I want to break press the OC, and it wasn't that impressive. It was like, okay. And I think Lurie here heard what was going on inside the building, stuff like that. So it was like, okay, got anybody else? And Doug was like, no, he wanted to keep his mentor, and that's when we know what happened with Doug. So I'm still going to wait and see when it comes to him overall.
Yeah, listen, I'm over the fact that nepotism. I'm good with it. Like he's qualified. He's a qualified NFL coach. I'll give him that now. That's where I'm at with Press. But let me ask you a question because you speak with the players. You interact with them. How do you think they feel about going up against their former coach?
They're taking it as professional as can. They all to end. They all like Doug as a person, but I think like what we saw last week, when when the clock starts going, it's all business from there on out. So there may be times where you see where Brandon Graham, after I play, Brandon Graham may see Doug over there. He may say something, a couple things, but when it comes to that line up and snap, it's the same thing. So there'll be a lot of brother-in-law before the game, a lot of brother-in-law and after the game and stuff like that. But those 60 minutes, it's going to be all business.
That's what I like to hear. Let me get your thoughts then on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Then, what issues the Eagles can run up playing against them?
I think running the ball is actually going to be tough. They're tied for the fewest rushing yards allowed heading into this game. A lot of that, I think, is because they've gotten out to so big leads that teams are just like, yeah, now we got to throw the ball, and then that leads to the lower running yards. But when you look at that front seven, and you got guys like Devin Allen playing well, Trevor Walker was looking like an overall pick. They're doing well. They're very athletic and they're very quick. And when you, the way the Eagles have had issues this year, the times when they have issues against the offensive line has been when they have quick inside those A and B gaps, and they've been getting some issues. And you still got Landon Dickerson, who's dealing with a foot. He's good to go. He's going to play and everything, but you still wonder how much. So if somebody steps on his foot, you're like, oh great, here you go. And do you have to run that? So I think you have that. We talked about Christian Kirk earlier. That concerns me a little bit as well too. And then overall, you still got to wonder, no matter what, special teams, because you look at what's happened with the special teams overall in his first couple of games when it comes to the not so much the punt return game, but the kick return and the block field goal. You got to wonder if Doug knows what's going on with the system, where they start looking a little bit and they start to run that. There's always going to be a question mark until they prove they're more solid. So I think that, and overall now I know this is gonna be a little slick too. Now we got the remnants of the storm coming up there. So ball security, like I think I don't worry that so much as Jalen. You look at a younger guy like Kenan Gainwell who had issues with fumbling earlier. You start to
Mhm.
wonder if that's going to affect how much they use them, stuff like that, and how much wind comes with this too. If it's going to affect the kicking game. So those are probably the things I'm looking at the most. I think it's going to be a very close game though. I really do.
All right. So let me get your thoughts then. What do you feel will be the final? What are your final scoring predictions?
Eagles 24 and Jaguars 20. And it's going to be one of those games where they're not. I don't think they're going to get to those big quick starts like we saw them do in the past few games. But I think it's one of the games where they actually score in the second half, and it's out of necessity because they were trying to keep up with what the Jaguars are doing. And overall, I think when we look back at this game, you'll see like just like we did with Detroit, where we saw like, oh wow, they're actually better than what we thought it is. I think a lot of people are going to come away with looking at this like, wow, the Jags are actually a playoff team. They're going to be that good. They're probably going to be the ones that they're set up right now to win the South. So I think overall, I think everybody's going to come away a little surprised. And if Philly's going to go crazy now, like, oh, we got a 4-0 team, first time since they had the Super Bowl year, right? It's going on. We're going to the Bowl. It's going to be one of those weeks.
Listen, you know how we are, man. They get excited when the good happens. We go low when the bad happens. We get real low.
Oh, we hear it on Twitter for sure. What are
Oh,
you ranking for? This is why you got this.
definitely will. Well, let me ask you this final question. Let me just say thank you so much for coming through and taking out the time to come on.
No
Um,
worries.
as a reporter, you're able to speak with many players. So let me ask you, who was your favorite Eagles player to interview and why?
That's tough. Oh, that's tough. See, I'll give my answer to that, but I'll say that I like talking to Zach McPherson. You see, like he's really got Javon Hargrave. Talk about the HBCU stuff, South Carolina State, and how even joke around how North Carolina A&T, who's their rivals, Mac McCain's in there. He's just like, doing all that stuff as well too. And Britton Covey's actually really good to talk to as well too. A lot of these guys are really you talk to Jordan Mailata, they're really good to talk to. But the person who I every week I seem like I gotta go talk to him because it's going to be one of those things where it's like I don't know what's going to say. It's like because there are times where I remember the first time I got a one on one with him back last year when I was doing a story about his upbringing playing in JUCO and everything, and just to hear his story overall, where he came from. I mean, everybody saw the podcast, that video podcast, Ryan Clark and some of those guys. It was really good, and you got to learn about how where he came, his upbringing, when he came to him being a father young, and then start his time in JUCO because when he almost quit. Like, there's one night where he got caught busted. He snuck out during before a game, and the coaches saw that, They let them play, but the following week they basically ran them new runs and up downs, all that stuff. And well, Slay was like, I'm not doing this. I'm quitting. And then one of the coaches was like, all right, cool. When you go back to where you come from, Brunswick, Georgia, there's nothing there for you. Go ahead and do that. And he came back 15 minutes later and continued. And from there, that point on, you saw the continued maturation and everything. And then Mississippi State, and we know the rest is history. But so from that aspect, it's really cool to that backstory. And then you just get the craziness. You don't know what you're going to hear. You're going to hear another swole Batman, random Mr. Sexy, Mr. I don't know what's this going comment from too. So he gives that balance. It's a good balance. And you see overall these guys, it's funny, especially this week, it's going to be key because he's on either side of the locker. You have McPherson on one side, Josiah Scott's on the other. And you hear he's big on making sure these guys are ready to go because he actually wants to get in the pay. We talked about the other one. So he's like, I want to make sure these guys get the bag because I want to be to the point where one of these guys take my job. I'm not going to make it easy for them, but eventually they take my job. And you hear a guy like that, and you see that guy. I think he's one of my favorite guys to interview when it comes to that.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to meet him this past summer. He signed my son's hat. He's a very good guy. He's one of those guys that, when you have a crowd of people going on, people see him no wave, he'll actually go out into the crowd and he'll just sign autographs as long as he possibly can before someone pulls him away. Like he is a people's champ. That's what I was calling when I saw him this summer, the people's champ. But listen, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I appreciate you for coming out today. I hope this is not the last time I get to interview. I hope you're able to come on in the future.
Definitely, man. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. It was fun talking, man. Had some good nights, man. Made me think too. I was like, dang it, that was too. Made me think. It was fun. So yeah, I appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, man. Listen, I appreciate you. And listen, everyone, please go out, check out his stuff. Chris got it on NJ.com. Eagles beat writer. You'll catch him on Twitter. He'll always be posting out his stories, which are great. You took after Mike Kaya, a guy who, I spoke to in the background, a great man. And you've done a marvelous job, taking over for him. So listen, I love your work. I love what you do. Again, I hope I'm able to speak with you in the future.
Thanks. I appreciate it. I was his Robin to his Batman at time. I guess. You know what I'm saying? I was happy being Nightwing / Robin on that one too, but it's good. So he helped me out a lot. But yeah, I appreciate it, man. Thank you very much.
You protecting Gotham very well, my guy.
DC better have a DC. I'm sorry, with all this Batman stuff, DC better have a deal with the Eagles after all this stuff we're talking about.
Right? Can we make it work? Can we make it work? DC, holler at your boys. But listen, everyone, I appreciate you all for coming through, for taking out the time to watch me. For those who will watch in the future, thank you so much. This has been another great episode of The Big Ticket. I'm your host, Vick3. This is Chris Franklin of NJ.com, Eagles beat writer. Everyone have a great night. We out.